means that, let me step back so people, I don't lay my back to anyone. Really what that means is just inserting the word gender identity in the anti-discrimination laws that already exist. Pretty simple. If you look at the entire laws that exist, and if you bold the changes, all you keep seeing is gender identity, gender identity. We shall not discriminate on the basis of religion, race, all the protected categories, and then gender identity. That's not included in the law right now. Gays and lesbians are protected in employment, housing, and public accommodation. We are included in the law. Transgender people are not. Gender identity is not. That got left behind, and it's the civil right in this state that really needs to be fixed. And we're here to do that. Right now, it's legal to discriminate against someone just because of their gender identity. They can get fired from their job. They can get denied housing. If you came to the hearings on the Hill, you'd hear story after story of people saying things like, well, when I called on the phone and asked how much the apartment was, I was told it was $450. When I got there, I was told it was $700. Or I was told it had been taken when I knew it hadn't been taken. People that start their transition who have terrific jobs, and then suddenly they can't put their right foot in front of their left foot correctly, and suddenly they're fired. And so these people, and oftentimes families will turn their backs on people too. So they wind up in a situation, and you'll hear more about that from our trainers, but they wind up in a situation where they can be homeless, they can be unemployed, having to turn to work that no one would want to turn to just to survive. And that's just the fact of the matter and the truth of the matter. So it's so important to pass this legislation to protect people and to give them recourse. Does that mean no one will discriminate? Of course not. People discriminate every day against other people. But it does mean that they'll have recourse. It'll mean that the occurrence of it will be less, and people will be able to fight for their rights. They'll be able to go to a human rights commission like Glendora Hughes has, the Prince George's Human Rights Commission. They'll be able to file a complaint. Right now, if you go to file a complaint, what happens, Glendora, in the state if a complaint is filed? What power do you have, or what happens?
Well, it's limited to taking it possibly under gender discrimination or disability, but we would have to argue and convince the court or administrative law judge that they should fine in favor of that person based on that. So it's not clear, and we haven't had a test case to see how the courts are going to look at it. But we have taken complaints, and we've been able to at least, by taking it, negotiate with the employer to avoid the person from getting fired or correcting whatever that issue is. Sometimes we're successful, and sometimes we're not.
So basically what you're saying is that you've been able to mediate some cases out, but you really have no specific teeth to it.
Yes.
And that is the situation, and we'd like to put some teeth behind that, which means including it in the law. So, in 2009, our guest speaker, Delegate Jocelyn Pena-Melnick, introduced the Gender Identity and Expression Anti-Discrimination Act to the Maryland General Assembly. She can talk more about that, but she was able to garner scores of co-sponsors among her fellow delegates in the House. Senator Mandolino was a sponsor in the Senate, and he was able to garner some co-sponsors there. But the House did not act, and the bill wound up in the Senate committee and died there. That's the second time this bill has died. We believe that this lack of disregard for basic civil rights and protection is intolerable in the state of Maryland. And Equality Maryland is committed to putting a lot of resources and work into changing that. In the legislative process, we were pitted against tales to evoke fear and outright lies. Perhaps you've heard some of them. We hope to dissipate some of that today. We believe that through advocacy, communication, and education, that same bill that will be introduced in 2010 will pass. The transgender community is a minority that essentially is being ruled by a majority, and that's never going to wind up there. We want to demystify the word transgender by education and outreach. I'm so glad you're all here, many of you for that purpose. And we also need allies to help advocate when the time comes during the legislative session which is January through April. So at some course, not right now, but some course during the course of this forum, you're going to get various, I'm a lawyer, so everything's a legal pad, various legal pads to sign up on, and I'm just going to read what they are. Don't feel compelled to do anything that you're not comfortable with, but I would encourage you, and if you have any questions about these things, just ask me, but let me give you the quick rundown. The first one is an anti-discrimination coalition. This will be mostly for groups, organizations that are here who would like to sign up and become part of this coalition. We already have about 7 to 10 organizational members. They're not on this list because I started a new list. Even if you aren't sure if you want to join, I will not put you on the list until I contact you and get an affirmative from you to be on that list. So even if you have an interest, please sign up. The other list is training. If you're here, if you represent a department, if you're from a department, again, it doesn't mean that we're going to come into your department and train. It means we will contact you and ask you if you would like training. There are heads of departments here. You can't train your departments and the other people, number one, because you're not transgender. I can't train either. Training means we come in with transgender trainers. If you have an interest, and you'll perhaps know that more an hour from now, whether you think that your employees or anyone else you know might benefit from training, please sign up on this list. We'll contact you again. Nothing happens until we get an affirmative from you. The last one of my favorites, it's what I'm calling the to-call list. Okay? You all are government employees. I'm not asking you to sign up as a person who works at DHS, but as an individual, if you'll put your name, your address, zip code, email, phone on here, what will happen is you will not become part of our mailing list. I promise you. You will not get mail from us. I promise you. The only thing that we would be asking you to do is make 2 calls or 2 letters and/or during the legislative session. One to your representative in the House and one to your representative in the Senate, just to ask them to be supportive of the gender identity bill, that you would like them to vote for it. When people make a call to their delegate or their senator, it makes a huge difference. You can't imagine. Maybe you feel when you go to the polls that you press the button, you put in the card or whatever, and maybe you're Xing out someone else next to you, or, you know, what difference does it make on local elections, maybe more in national? It does make a difference all the time, but I can tell you that making a call here in Maryland to someone that represents you makes a huge difference. It can turn people around. It has turned people around. In the last legislative session, we phone banked. We phone banked the ACLU list. We phone banked everyone. People called, people that were not going to vote for the bill, and in the end of it all, when they got 70 calls from their constituents, they said, okay, now I have cover. Now I can vote for this. Now I know that at least part of my constituency will be in favor of this, and I do have some support. So I would encourage you to sign up. Again, the only thing that would happen is that we would contact you during the legislative session and ask you to make that call. It doesn't mean you have to. We might not know if you do or don't, but we can put you at least on our phone bank list to